Hi, everyone. So I'd like to do a reading for you if you're trying to make a decision about something. So for example, if you're trying to choose between two different jobs, or if you're trying to decide whether you should stay with your partner or not, these types of things. So it's a question where you could take two separate paths. You could take this job, you could take that job. You could stay with your partner, you can leave your partner. So think of a question in those types of terms, because we're going to do pros and cons for each of those paths. So if you need to take a moment to maybe focus on your question and see and assign path one and path two. So for example, I'm going to stay with my partner is path one. I'm going to leave my partner is path two. And we're going to look at the pros and cons of each of those paths for you. And then we'll see what it is you really want. And then hopefully get some advice for you regarding this choice. So this top row is going to represent your path one, and the bottom row is going to represent your path two. Over here, we'll have some other advice and guidance for you, but for now, just focus on your path one and path two. So your pros for path one and your cons for path one are here in this position, and I will walk you through all of this. And this position is what you want. Then we have the pros and cons for path two, and then finally, some final advice for you. So I'm going to add 2 oracle cards to each of these positions. And I'm going to add this archetype of a card, and then we can get into these decisions, into the choices and what they represent for you. So let's start with path one and the pros for that. What benefits does your path one mean for you? So we have the sun, which I'm going to flip over, but that definitely sounds like path one could be a very happy, fulfilling, optimistic type of choice for you. Then we have surrender and the empty room. So it looks like if you were to choose path one, whatever you assigned that to be, that it feels like it would require you, or maybe even allow you, to just go with the flow, surrender to something. It's an empty room, it's a blank slate. It almost feels like choice one would bring you so much happiness because you haven't done that yet. You haven't tried that yet. There's an empty room here, which is full of potential. It feels like a blank slate, and that makes you very, very happy. So if you were to choose path one, it feels like it could be very stable for you. It feels fulfilling. It feels happy. It feels optimistic. Feels like go with the flow. And it's like you can do anything you want in this energy. It's like the world is yours. So certainly that would be a good reason to do path one. But let's look at the cons of path one. So there's the High Priestess, there's cleanse, and there's the shadow. So this feels to me like there is probably a lot of shadow work that comes with whatever this choice is. So for example, and these are just examples, so I would like for you to just try to apply your own situation, but I'm going to give you an example so that it will help you or help me explain the energy. So for example, if your path one was to leave your partner, you're saying, well, that would give me, I feel good about that. I feel like it cleans the slate. I can start over. I can do whatever I want. But then you're viewing the downside as having to really face a shadow aspect of yourself. So to use that same example, path one is leaving my partner. This means that you have to do a deep dive, perhaps into your soul, to confront the parts of yourself that you've been avoiding, that maybe you're afraid to be alone. Leaving your partner would mean being alone. So now make that make sense for whatever your decision is. But it feels like, even though it's it looks like it's a benefit, you're viewing it as not a benefit. You're viewing it as a lot of work, tapping into your intuition, really doing a deep dive into shadow work and whatever that is. So that may be why you're avoiding path one. You may be avoiding that because you know it's going to be great for you, but it's a lot of work, in other words. So before we go to what do you want, I would like to look at the pros and cons for choice two. But the High Priestess just called back to me. So the High Priestess is really saying that your shadow work is really just an integration of all parts of you. So I think I need to circle back to this just to tell you that shadow work is not a bad thing. Shadow work is a good thing. Your shadow side is not a bad thing. Your shadow side is a good thing. The shadow side are the parts of you that you repressed. But by bringing your shadow into the light, that's very empowering. There's like a rebirth that's involved with that and a total cleanse of the soul, which I think is why we're seeing cleanse here. There's also a lot of blues in this energy. So this could very much be about your third eye, perhaps your throat chakra. But I do get the sense that you have blockages in your third eye, and that may be part of why you can't see this for what it truly is or what it's truly meant to be for you. So I'm already getting some ideas, but I don't want to jump ahead. Let's look at the pros for doing the opposite of that, or the other choice. So we have the Ace of Swords, protection, and the Maiden. So with the Ace of Swords, you feel like this is your truth. You feel like this is the correct way to go. And with this protection and maiden, it almost makes me feel like the damsel in distress type of energy. I am not saying that you are that. It's the energy that this is giving me. That, again, if I were to use the random example of taking path one would mean being on your own. Taking path two would mean you have protection. You have someone outside of yourself protecting you in this situation. And there's that truth, that limiting belief that you believe is true, that you need protection. Or maybe that is true for you, that you need protection, but that is definitely what you believe. You believe that you need protection in this situation. But this does feel like something's out of balance though, as far as the pros of this and the cons of this. So it already feels like there's a bias in the cards. And so that's what I was saying. I'm already kind of getting an idea, but we'll have to wait and see what you want and what the advice is and try to piece it all together. But I do think that you going with option two makes you feel more comfortable. It's more of your comfort zone, where path one is way outside of your comfort zone. But I do think that you still have a curiosity about path one, and that's why you're here in this reading. It's why the sun in the empty room showed up, because you know your own potential, but there's still something here that makes you feel like you need to be protected. So let's look at the cons of taking path two. So there's the Star. We're going to flip that over though. Fear and the Warrior. So this is still giving me that energy of kind of that idea that you need someone else. The Warrior is saying that whatever path two is, there's a conflict there. So maybe it's a conflict at your current job. It's a conflict with your current partner. Make this make sense, but it's keeping you small. And I keep getting that. Path two feels very small. Path one feels very expansive, and it may be why you're struggling between these two decisions, because one is very comfortable and one is very uncomfortable. But I can see there's two black cards coming through here. One is protection and one is fear. So there's a very grounded type of energy coming from you, and that may be why this feels more comfortable, because it's like, okay, well, I feel comfortable here. It's a little bit too small, but I'm used to this and I'm protected. Where up here, if path one, you really have to surrender to the universe. You have to open up basically your soul. You have to cleanse your third eye, look at your shadow side, integrate your shadow side. So that feels like a lot of work, but this star is telling me that there's a cycle that you're in that's preventing you from healing. And that's showing up as the con in this situation. You're not doing your healing, you're staying small, you're in a cycle, and there's some kind of conflict, whether it's with yourself or someone else. So this is very clear to me why you're fluctuating between these two, because you may know that this is the better option for you, the healthier option. We do see cleanse and surrender. Here we see protection and fear, but it's comfortable for you. So I can absolutely see why you're struggling with this decision. But let's look at what you want in this situation. So there's the Seven of Cups, which could tell me that you don't know what you want, which is why you came to this reading. Then we have Space, and then we have the Riddle. So the Riddle and Seven of Cups are completely opposite types of energies, because the Riddle is that aha moment. And Space is giving me the same thing as this empty room. So it's leading me to believe that, and it's let me slow down so I'm making sure I'm articulating this correctly. It's like, you know that this empty room and space, you know this is your aha moment. You know your potential. You know you want to give yourself all that room to jump into whatever this new thing is, this new path, this thing that will make you feel very expansive. But then we see Space, which is also the same as these black colors here. And so your aha moment keeps fluctuating because we have the Seven of Cups. So hopefully this is making sense, but it's really following what we've been saying, that you're fluctuating between the aha moment of, yes, I need to do this, but then you fluctuate to the Ace of Swords truth that, no, I need to stay here. And so you don't even know what you want. And so again, that's probably why you are here. It feels like there is love involved in this, because when I see Seven Cups, I know there's a lot of feelings involved. So if this is a job that you love, you don't want to leave it for that reason, but you know there's a better option. Or if there's a person you really love, but leaving them feels like the better option because all you do is fight, then that applies here. But it does feel like you're trying to be fair, perhaps to both parties, both jobs, both offers, both people, if that's the case. You're really trying to be fair to yourself and someone else. And I think that you're really, really struggling with this. So let's look at your advice in this situation. So there's Death, Stop, and the Vow. So the Death card is supporting the Shadow and the High Priestess. They're all giving very similar vibes, where you can stop something while also keeping promises, is what the Vow is telling me. So this is a very complicated message. So I am going to do my best to explain this to you. We saw the Star here, which is about really holding on to hope in a situation. And that showed up with Path 2. So I do feel like you still have hope that Path 2 is going to work. I feel like there is a way to integrate all of these things. So bear with me. The advice is still for you to do this. The advice is always going to be to do the shadow work with Death and Stop. So this is really saying to only focus on why you think that Path 1 is a problem, why you think that Path 1 is going to be hard work. And that's the part of you that you really probably are being encouraged to get in touch with, that yes, integrating my shadow self is going to be hard, or being by myself is going to be hard, or starting this business on my own is going to be hard. Make that make sense for you. But the advice is to focus on that. And then what's really interesting with the Vow is it's telling me you can still keep your promises, keep your commitments to this particular thing that you feel comfortable with, while also doing this. So if you can make that make sense for you, so to use the example of Path 1 being leaving your partner and Path 2 staying with your partner, the simplest way I can put this is you do the shadow work And then all of a sudden, the problems that you have in this partnership start to make more sense to you. You can start to fix them. You can start to clear them up. Blockages are starting to be cleared, and it actually improves the relationship. So what it's saying is you don't have to, in this case, what I'm getting, you don't necessarily have to choose between two. That if you start out on a business of your own, you can still keep this job and eventually maybe integrate those things together, whatever that is for you. But eventually this won't feel so hard anymore because you've put so much emphasis on your own potential and your own healing. So I think the crux of this particular matter is the healing that needs to be done for you, and however this shadow aspect of yourself rings true for you, whatever part of your shadow side you're avoiding, that there's still hope here, and that once you integrate those aspects of yourself, to use the example of afraid to be alone, go practice being alone and see how that improves the relationship. So again, that's just an example, and I'm hoping that I'm explaining this in a way that you can apply it to your own situation. But this death card is really saying that this is going to change everything. Death is irreversible. When you go through a spiritual death, you reemerge as a whole new, brand new version of yourself. And that's saying that if you just stop and look at the bigger picture of this, because the vow does that, the vow allows you to look at things from a higher perspective while honoring commitments that you've made, while honoring commitments you've made to your ancestors or whatever that is for you, that there is a way to really transform this whole thing so that you can see it from a higher perspective, and it no longer is a choice between two things. It's about integrating things, and that starts by integrating all aspects of yourself. So, wow. So there you go. So that is your reading for weighing out your decisions. Will you please let me know how this was resonant for you? Consider subscribing to the channel if you like my vibe, and we will do this again sometime. Thanks, everybody. Bye.